It started as something innocent. Just a family going through old photo albums on a rainy Sunday afternoon. The power had flickered out from a passing storm, and with no TV, no Wi-Fi, and nothing else to do, the Ryans decided to dig into their old memories. Laughter echoed through the living room as they passed around yellowing photographs, birthdays, picnics, Christmas mornings. Moments that felt warm, safe, full of life. But then, Katie saw something. She squinted at a picture from her 6th birthday party, taken in the backyard. The kids were laughing, cake on their faces. But behind them, just barely visible through the wooden slats of the fence, stood a man. He was distant, blurry, almost like a shadow. Tall. Still. Wearing a dark coat, despite it being the middle of June. His face was hard to make out, but something about the way he was turned, not quite toward the camera, but toward them. Katie didn't think much of it at first. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe someone passing by. But then she found him again. In another photo. This one from their Christmas trip to her grandparents' cabin, hundreds of miles away, 2 years later. Her mom stood by the fireplace, holding a toddler Katie in her arms. And there he was. In the window's reflection. That same tall man. Watching. Her hands trembled as she flipped through more albums. Summer vacation, 1999, there. School recital, 2002, there again. Always in the background. Never close. Never interacting. Just watching. She showed her parents, but they brushed it off. Coincidence, her dad said. Maybe someone we used to know, her mom offered. But Katie could feel it. That twisting sensation in her gut that told her this wasn't right. This wasn't normal. As the years passed, she tried to forget. But she couldn't. Not when she started noticing the figure in more recent photos. Her college graduation. A group selfie with friends. Even a random shot someone else had taken during a crowded music festival. He was always there. The same coat. The same posture. The same haunting stillness. The strangest part? He hadn't aged. Not a single wrinkle, not a hint of change. From 1993 to now, he looked exactly the same. One night, unable to sleep, Katie dug deeper. She scanned every family photo, every class picture, every candid snapshot anyone had ever taken of her. She even called her cousin in Oregon to ask for a copy of that road trip photo from 1997. And there he was again. Her obsession grew. Who was this man? How was he in all these places, across years, across states? Why her family? Why her? But nothing prepared her for what she found next. A photo she'd never seen before. Taken years before she was born. A picture of her mother as a child, sitting on a swing in her childhood backyard. And in the background, there he was. The man. Still watching. Katie couldn't shake the image from her mind. The photo was old, grainy, sepia-toned, faded around the edges like a relic from another lifetime. Her mother, barely 6 years old, smiled shyly at the camera, hair in loose curls, eyes bright and innocent. But just behind the wooden fence, that same chilling figure stood motionless, eyes locked on the little girl swinging gently on the rusted swing set. The weight of it hit Katie like a punch. This wasn't just a strange coincidence or a trick of light. This man had been watching her family for decades. She sat back, heart pounding, a cold sweat breaking out across her skin. Who was he? Why had he been lurking on the edges of her family's life for so long? And what did it mean that he appeared in pictures before she was even born? Katie reached out to her mother with a trembling voice. Mom, do you remember anyone like this? Someone, watching you when you were a kid? Her mother frowned, confusion knitting her brows. No, I don't think so. Why? What do you mean? Katie hesitated. She didn't want to sound crazy. But the photos told a story she couldn't ignore. There's a man. In all our family pictures. Like, always there. Watching. For years. Decades, actually. Her mother's face paled. Are you sure? Maybe it's just someone in the background, a stranger, or a neighbor. But Katie knew the difference. This wasn't random. She could feel it deep down. There was something unnatural about him, like he didn't belong in any of those moments, like he was part of something darker. Desperate for answers, Katie began digging into the family's past. She pored over old photo albums, letters, diaries, anything she could find. She called distant relatives, hoping someone else had noticed the strange figure. But no one would admit to seeing him. In fact, most dismissed her concerns as imagination. Then, late one night, while scrolling through an old box of letters her grandmother had saved, Katie stumbled on something strange. A letter addressed to her great-grandmother, dated 1935. The handwriting was elegant but hurried. The letter spoke of a presence that watches but never intervenes, warning to beware the silent shadow that follows. Katie's hand shook as she read the words again and again. Could this be about the same man? A warning passed down decades before any of the family photos? If so, what was this shadow? A ghost? A guardian? Or something far worse? Her mind raced. She tried to remember if anyone in her family had ever talked about unexplained events, things moving on their own, strange noises in the night, or feelings of being watched. And then memories surfaced. Her uncle once mentioned hearing footsteps in an empty house. Her aunt recalled a cold draft that always lingered near the old garden shed. Little things no one ever thought much about, until now. The more Katie looked, the more she realized this wasn't just about photos. It was about a presence that had been part of her family's story for generations, lurking just out of sight. But why now? Why had she suddenly noticed after all these years? Determined, Katie turned to online forums and local history archives. She discovered rumors about a man who had disappeared mysteriously in their town in the early 1900s. He was described as tall, always wearing a dark coat, never speaking to anyone, just silently watching from a distance. Some locals called him the Watcher. Others whispered about curses and unsettled spirits tied to the old Ryan property. Katie felt the chill of those stories creeping over her. Was this the same man? Could the Watcher have somehow become intertwined with her family, following them through time? Was he a guardian or a threat? As she sat there, piecing together clues, a sudden knock at the door made her jump. No one was supposed to be visiting this late. Heart racing, she crept to the window and peered outside, but the street was empty, quiet under the glow of the street lamp. Yet she felt it again. The eyes. Watching. Waiting. Katie's mind was a whirlwind of questions she couldn't answer. The more she dug, the thicker the mystery grew, wrapping tighter around her family's history. She felt like she was chasing shadows, trying to make sense of a presence that seemed to slip just out of reach. But one thing was clear, the man in the photos wasn't just a random figure. He was connected to her family, somehow woven into the very fabric of their lives. Late nights became her new normal. She scoured the internet for anything related to the Watcher, piecing together stories whispered in local legends. Some said he was a restless spirit, cursed to observe without ever intervening. Others believed he was a dark omen, a harbinger of misfortune that followed the Ryans wherever they went. Yet no one seemed to know why, or how. Katie's search caught the attention of her best friend, Mark, who had always been fascinated by the paranormal. "You're chasing a ghost, Katie," he joked one evening, but she could see the worry behind his smile. "But maybe there's more to this. What if the man's presence is tied to something your family did, or something they hid?" The idea struck a chord. Katie remembered stories her grandmother used to tell about a family feud, old secrets buried deep beneath polite smiles and holiday dinners. Her great-grandfather had been a stern man, rumored to have made enemies in town. Maybe the Watcher was a reminder of that past, a silent witness to events better left forgotten. Meanwhile, strange things began happening around Katie's own home. Lights flickered without explanation, doors creaked open late at night, and the cold spot near the living room window, the same spot where the figure appeared in photos, grew colder. One night, Katie swore she saw a shadow moving just beyond the curtains, watching her as she tried to sleep. The feeling of being watched wasn't just in photos anymore, it was real, alive, creeping into her daily life. Her parents noticed the change in her. Katie was quieter, more distracted, but whenever she tried to talk about the photos or the strange occurrences, they dismissed her concerns as stress or imagination. "You're letting these old stories get to your head," her mother said one afternoon. "You need to focus on real life, not ghosts." But Katie couldn't ignore it. Not when the mystery was pulling her deeper. One afternoon, she visited the local historical society, hoping to find something more concrete. The elderly archivist, Mrs. Dalton, listened intently as Katie described the man and the family photos. "There are old records here," Mrs. Dalton said carefully, "about a man named Elias Granger. He was a recluse, lived near your family's property over 100 years ago. Some believed he had knowledge of dark rituals. Others said he vanished without a trace, but his shadow lingered in town folklore." Katie felt a chill. Elias Granger. Could this be the Watcher? The pieces were starting to connect, but instead of comfort, the answers only deepened the unease. As she left the archives, Katie noticed a figure standing across the street. Tall. Dark coat. Still as ever. She blinked, and the man was gone. Now the mystery wasn't just about photos or old stories. It was personal. Someone, or something, was watching her. Following her. Waiting. What did Elias Granger want? Why was he tied to the Ryan family? And was Katie ready to uncover the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be? The chilling figure remained a silent question mark, haunting the edges of her life. And Katie knew one thing for sure, this story was far from over. The days that followed felt like walking through a nightmare Katie couldn't wake from. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer, every creak in the house sharper, every glance over her shoulder heavier with dread. The line between reality and something darker blurred until she wasn't sure if she was imagining things, or if the man in the dark coat was truly stalking her steps. Katie started recording everything, the flickering lights, the cold drafts, the unexplained noises. Her phone's camera caught nothing unusual at first, just static and shadows. But late one night, when she was too restless to sleep, she pointed it toward the living room window, the same place the figure had appeared in so many photos. For a moment, a faint silhouette flickered on the screen, watching from the outside, eyes glinting faintly like embers in the dark. Her breath caught. This was no longer just a family mystery, it was real. It was here. She shared the footage with Mark, who grew pale watching the silent video. "Katie, this isn't just history or old legends anymore. This is something alive. Something waiting." The tension in Katie's life seeped into everything. Friends noticed she was jumpy, always looking behind her. Her parents grew more distant, uncomfortable with the questions she asked. Even her dog wouldn't go near the window where the cold spot lingered. One night, unable to resist any longer, Katie returned to the old Ryan property, the land her ancestors had owned for generations, now mostly overgrown and forgotten. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the crunch of her footsteps on dead leaves. She felt the weight of unseen eyes following her every move. Then, near the edge of the property, she saw it. A faint glow flickered beneath an ancient oak tree, like a candle burning in a hollow. Heart pounding, she approached, and the air grew colder, heavy with something unspoken. A whisper brushed past her ears, unintelligible but urgent. The figure appeared again, just beyond the glow, his dark coat blending into the night. His presence was overwhelming, like a storm about to break. Katie's hands trembled. She wanted to run but felt rooted to the spot, caught in the gravity of this silent watcher. Was he a protector? A curse? Or something far worse? Then a voice echoed inside her head, soft but chilling, "You cannot run from what has always been with you." The words chilled her to the bone. Suddenly, the ground beneath her shifted. Images flashed in her mind, old family secrets, broken promises, and a shadow stretching back through time. The man in the photos wasn't just watching, he was waiting for something, waiting for her. Back at home, Katie's phone buzzed with an unknown number. The caller said nothing, just breathed, deep, slow, and cold. When she answered again, a distorted voice whispered, "Find the truth before it finds you." Katie was no longer just a curious girl uncovering family history. She was caught in a web of mystery, terror, and an ancient secret that threatened everything she loved. And as the chilling figure watched from the darkness, Katie realized that the past wasn't done with her yet. The question was, would she survive the truth when it finally came for her? The haunting presence remained, a silent shadow lurking just out of sight, promising that the next chapter would be the most dangerous yet. Just when Katie thought she had reached the edge of the mystery, the ground shifted beneath her in a way she never expected. A week after that chilling night at the old Ryan property, she received an unexpected package, an old, worn-out box with no return address. Inside were more photographs, but these weren't just any family snapshots. These were pictures she had never seen before, taken decades ago, even before her great-grandmother's time. And in every one of them, the same tall man appeared, but now, he was closer, almost as if he wanted to be seen. But that wasn't the biggest shock. Tucked beneath the photos was a brittle, folded letter addressed to her by name. The handwriting was unfamiliar, shaky, as if written by someone unsure of their own words. The letter warned Katie to stop digging into the past. It spoke of a dark pact made by her ancestors, a secret bound by silence and fear. The man in the photos, the Watcher, was not just a ghost or a forgotten figure. He was a keeper of that pact, a guardian who punished those who broke the silence. Katie's heart raced. A dark pact? What could her family have possibly agreed to? And why had no one ever told her? The letter hinted at sacrifices, at promises made under moonlight, and at a debt owed through generations. It was clear now that the man's presence was tied to something far deeper, far more dangerous than she had imagined. Trying to make sense of it all, Katie reached out once again to Mrs. Dalton at the Historical Society. This time, the archivist hesitated before speaking. "There are whispers," she admitted softly, "about the Ryans and a terrible event decades ago. Some say your family made a deal with Elias Granger to protect their land, but at a price. Those who break the pact, well, they say the Watcher doesn't just observe. He punishes." The weight of those words crushed Katie's spirit. This was no longer just a creepy story or an unsettling mystery. It was a living nightmare, one that threatened her family and herself. She could feel the eyes of the Watcher on her constantly, like a shadow that followed no matter where she went. That night, as she lay in bed, a sudden crash came from downstairs. She rushed to the living room to find an old photo album, one she had never seen before, thrown open on the floor. And there, scrawled on the inside cover in the same shaky handwriting as the letter, were words that chilled her to the bone: "The debt will be paid. The Watcher waits." Katie knew she was running out of time. The stakes had never been higher, and the Watcher was no longer just a figure in the background. He was a force closing in, a reminder that some family secrets are better left buried. And as the shadows lengthened outside her window, Katie understood that uncovering the truth might be the only way to survive, but the cost could be more than she was ready to pay. Katie's hands shook as she pieced together the fragments of the past, each photo, each letter, each whispered warning leading her toward a truth darker than she could have imagined. The Watcher was no mere shadow, he was a guardian bound by the pact her ancestors made long ago to protect their family from something far worse. But now, the pact was unraveling, and the debt was due. Determined to face whatever awaited, Katie returned to the old Ryan property one final time, carrying the letter and photos as proof of what had been hidden. The night was thick with fog, the air heavy and cold, as if the land itself was holding its breath. She made her way to the ancient oak tree where the Watcher's presence was strongest. There, in the dim glow of her flashlight, the tall figure emerged from the mist, Elias Granger. But this time, Katie saw more than just the cold, unblinking eyes. She saw sorrow, centuries of waiting, and a burden heavier than the years alone. Elias spoke without moving his lips, his voice echoing inside her mind. He told her the story of the Pact. Her family's ancestors had called upon him to protect their land from a darkness that threatened to consume everything. In return, Elias was bound to watch, to guard, and to punish those who betrayed the agreement. The Watcher was both protector and judge. Katie realized the Pact wasn't just about protection, it was about balance. Her family's silence had kept the darkness at bay, but her questions, her uncovering of secrets, had broken the fragile peace. Now, the Watcher had come for her, not to harm, but to demand a choice. With trembling hands, Katie offered to take on the burden, to become the new guardian, to keep the Pact alive and protect her family and the town. Elias nodded, and as the dawn's first light pierced through the fog, the Watcher faded, leaving Katie standing alone but transformed. The weight of the Watcher's role settled on her shoulders, a chilling responsibility she hadn't asked for but accepted to save those she loved. Just as she turned to leave, Katie's phone buzzed. A message appeared, a photo of her family, but this time, the Watcher wasn't in the background. Instead, standing beside her mother, was a woman, familiar yet unknown. The caption read, "You're not alone." Katie's breath caught. Had the Pact always been bigger than she thought? Was there someone else watching, waiting in the shadows? The mystery wasn't over. It had only just begun. Katie stood frozen, the glow of her phone casting a soft light on her face as she stared at the photo. The woman beside her mother was a stranger, yet something deep inside told her this wasn't just any stranger. This was a message, a sign that the story she thought she had finished was far more complex than she'd imagined. In the days that followed, Katie found herself reflecting on everything she'd uncovered. The chilling figure, the ancient Pact, the legacy her family carried, it wasn't just about fear or curses. It was about responsibility, sacrifice, and the invisible threads that connect us all across time. She reached out to her parents, this time with calm and honesty. She shared what she had learned, the warnings she had received, and the choice she had made. Slowly, their skepticism melted away, replaced by a quiet acceptance. Her mother revealed long-hidden stories about the family's past, stories passed down through whispered conversations and hidden diaries. They spoke of strength, resilience, and the heavy cost of keeping darkness at bay. Katie also stayed close to Mark, whose unwavering support helped her face the new reality. Together, they researched local legends, discovering others in the town who spoke of Watchers, guardians, and forgotten pacts. It became clear that Katie's family was part of something much bigger, a silent network of protectors balancing light and shadow. The woman in the photo remained a mystery, but Katie began to believe she was an ally, someone who had watched over the family before her time and would continue to do so. The sense of being watched didn't vanish, but it no longer felt threatening. Instead, it was a reminder that some mysteries serve a purpose, protecting more than just secrets, they protect lives. Life gradually returned to a new normal, but Katie knew she had changed. The thrill of uncovering the unknown had shifted into a deep respect for the past and a cautious hope for the future. She understood now that some stories don't have neat endings, and that's okay. Sometimes, the real power lies in accepting the mysteries that shape us and choosing to move forward, even when the shadows linger. In sharing her story, Katie hoped others might find courage to face their own hidden fears and secrets. She wanted them to know that being watched, or feeling haunted by the past, doesn't have to mean being trapped. Sometimes, it's a call to awaken, to protect, to learn, and to grow. As the sun set behind the hills surrounding her family's old property, Katie took one last look at the photos lined up on her desk. The Watcher was gone from the backgrounds now, replaced by faces full of life, hope, and connection. The dark figure that once loomed had transformed into a symbol of protection and strength, a reminder that sometimes the scariest stories lead us to the strongest truths. The mystery of the Watcher was no longer just a creepy story or an old family secret, it was part of Katie's life, part of her family's legacy, and part of a timeless journey between light and dark, fear and courage. And though the shadows would always be there, Katie was ready to face them, one step at a time.